Hello, my name is Dylanclark, and I am a podcaster for the National Public Radio. And today, I'm doing a segment on classical music. Very exciting, right? All right, so we're going to get right into it now. So first off, we're going to talk about some of the history of classical music. So classical music is most commonly referred to as a musical tradition in the Western world that is considered to be distinct from Western folk music and popular music traditions. So that means it started in that area. So originating actually in Western Europe with the music of the early Christian church, and it was often classified into different areas of medieval, Renaissance, Baroque, and then classical, romantic, modernist, and then postmodern, contemporary. Those are the main different types of music, and today we're focusing on classical music. So it did not appear until the early 19th century. And the easiest reference to classical music is recorded by the Oxford English Dictionary. And one distinguishing feature of Western classical music based on classical music is its use of staff notation, which started in about the 11th century, so that's a long time ago. And that was developed by the Catholic monks that developed the first forms of modern European musical notation because they wanted to standardize liturgy throughout the worldwide church. All right, next we are going to head into talking about the different genres of classical music. So there is going to be 8 genres of classical music, and some of these are very hard to pronunciate, so do not lay on the hammer on me so much. We're going to start off with avant-garde, baroque, the chamber music, chant, choral, classical crossover, 7th one being early music, and then the last one being high classical. So those are going to be our 8 genres we're focusing on today, talking about. And now we're going to look at some famous classical music composers. So obviously the first one that comes to mind when most people think about classical music is going to be Beethoven, who was alive from 1770 and then ended up dying in 1827. And that's going to be like the face of classical music during that time, really starting to like bring it into effect. Obviously, he was very talented at what he did. And we're also going to talk about Mozart, who was a little bit earlier than Beethoven, who was also, again, a very famous classical music musician. And those are going to be like the 2. And then under that, we're going to have Frederick Chopin, Johannes Brahms, and then Claude Debussy, who are going to be 3 other major classical music composers, who is pretty interesting. There's actually a lot of different people on here that are just very famous in this during time period. A lot of the main time periods being from the late 1600s with John Sebastian, starting all the way up from Johannes Brahms, all the way to 1897, and then Claude Debussy being in 1918. So it's pretty much at late 1600s to early 1900s are going to be it's a very wide range, but the 1800s is probably that most of the year is going to have a lot of classical music time. That's going to be right when like everything is finally like coming into place and stuff like that. And we're going to go through a couple of these people's most famous stuff. So some famous tunes in classical music. So Mozart had In Clean Nette Musik, and then Beethoven released Für Els, and then we were talking about Puccini earlier. One of his most famous pieces is O mio bambino caro, who we are actually going to take a little listen to right now, just to give you guys a little bit of an example of what that would sound like. So this is Puccini, O mio bambino caro. All right, so as you can hear in that piece of classical music, a lot of the instruments that were used in that classical music was the violin, the viola, the cello, and then some of the double bass. And then we have our main singer, who is at that very high pitched tone that is very difficult to do and very impressive. And I think that music is very soothing to listen to, and it's very interesting to hear what people were listening to in this time period and what was so popular. And the difference between this kind of music, classical music, and the music that we hear today is classical music takes hundreds and hundreds of people to be doing what they need to be doing on their instruments and reading the exact sheet music they have and all their notes, going back to the printing press that was very huge for this time period, and everyone has to be 100% on cue to make this correct. Whereas music now, it's mostly solo artists and maybe a band of 4 to 5 people who have to be in sync, which is just so different than what it used to be. This is so mesmerizing to watch, and just it's so much talent involved, and I'm just very impressed. Overall, I think we've gone over a lot of stuff about classical music so far, and we might be releasing a new podcast soon, but so far this is going to be all we got today. Thank you for listening to the National Public Radio. Again, I am Dylan Clark, and I appreciate your time.